Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dr. Mike Bowie, National Executive Director of Strengthening the Black Church for the 21st Century, and I want to welcome you to our monthly Lunch and Learn webinar. Every month we have practical tools to empower you, to help your leadership, to revitalize your church, and to ultimately transform your community. So if this is your first time here, we want to say welcome. And if you are a returning person, we want to say it's good to be back. It is good seeing everybody here on this call today. Well, we want to get into it. As you all know, that we live in a fast-paced society, and today's media landscape is moving real fast. And the Black church, y'all, we have a powerful opportunity to shape new narratives, to build trust, and to extend reach far beyond the sanctuary walls. So this session today will explore how the effective public relations and strategic communications can really impact and amplify your social ministry impact, and most of all, your ministry's message to engage both the congregation and your community. We have Dominique Francisco. She is a strategic communication. She's a faith-based leader, and she's an advocate who works to build ministry bridges between government, politics, and community engagement. She currently is the director and public relations person for marketing for the United Women of Faith, where she leads the national communications initiatives that advance justice, equity, and spiritual renewal. So glad to have Dominique. She goes by Dom. So good to have Dom here today. So, Dom, as you come forward, I want you to know that we're excited about how you can help the Black church move forward. And here's some good news. The theme today is tell us some good news. So we need some good news in this crazy time. So, Dom, I want to welcome you here to Lunch and Learn and SBC 21. Take it away, Dom.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I just want to say thank each and every one of you for joining. I know holiday season is coming up. Everybody has a lot on their plate. So I want to thank you for joining. I want to thank you. A huge shout out to SBC 21 for just even inviting me to come and be present in this space. So I don't think I need to get into my introductions or anything. I'm going to go ahead and share these slides. It's already been mentioned. I'm a Cincinnati native. I went to the University of Cincinnati undergrad and grad with my master's, as well as my bachelor's degree. I am currently at Hampton University, the real HU. I'll debate some people about that, where I'm pursuing my doctorate of public theology and community engagement. And so it's already been mentioned, I have some experience in the political sector, have experience in the corporate sector, and I'm currently working at United Women in Faith as the director of marketing and PR. So I am loving every bit of it, every moment of it. But let's jump into, why I chose this topic. And it's because I believe communication truly is a ministry. When you think about social media, when you think about news media pickup, it's important to think about it as a ministry and not as an add-on or an additive to ministry. We must post online when we send out those announcements, or when we're talking to press. It is to help enhance the ministry that is already happening in the four walls and to get our information, get our messaging out there. So let's get into it here. And so I like to say, before the internet, the Black church was the internet. Like when you think about everything that has happened in our Black community, you didn't just go in and pick up a phone and scroll on the timeline or look at the algorithm back in the day. You were in the church, you checked in at church. The Black church was the newsroom. It was where information first happened. It was your dispatch center, so to speak. And that's where, we communicated and we mobilized as a community. And it was also a strategic or a strategy hub. And that's where leaders gathered to plan, to respond, to just organize and love on one another. But I love this piece, and I'll debate with anybody. The Black church was one of the originators of mass communication. We spread news across the neighborhood. We were able to enact and spread news across states lines and even nationally, which I'll dive into a little later. But what we learned from Black church in general is, you learn things from the pulpit, you received information from the church bulletin, you received information from the church mothers. Even during testimony time, sometimes people's business was dropped out. And even in the pews, when people were whispering about what was happening, that sometimes it was more news than, CNN might have, but the news that was spread in the church traveled quickly. And it was either good or bad, it didn't matter, but the church was the media to drive news and drive traffic and drive information quicker than anything else. But when the internet happened, something shifted with us. We weren't able to move information as quickly. We weren't able to just educate as quickly. And I think especially when social media happened, something shifted. And so I'm not sure why, but honestly, I can say we have been doing PR long before PR was a hot topic. So when you look at social media now, you see these PR influencers, you see these PR channels. And I want to say, I truly believe the Black church led PR. We were doing it before it was a hot topic. We were doing it before it was a thing, but we were doing it for survival. We weren't doing it for accolades or for likes. We were doing it to make sure that we sustained as a Black community. And the Black church has always been in the business of shaping narratives, informing the community, and moving people to action, regardless of race, creed, or color. We were moving people to help enact the change of laws. And so as you look at this, I love civil rights, the civil rights movement. So during the civil rights movement, the communication work of the Black church, it wasn't just cultural. It was strategic, it was organized, it was intentional, and it was ministry and media all in one. And it might not have been something that we thought about then because we were just trying to fight to survive, but mass meetings happened in church basements. Strategy sessions were happening, in the church, marches, sit-ins, all the things, prayer vigils were being planned and implemented throughout the city, throughout the church. But the thing that we often overlook is reporters needed the truth. And when they came to the church, they got the truth. So the church was leading this PR movement that, we just oftentimes don't think about. And, if organizers needed strategy, they came to the church. If the community needed direction, they came to the church. And the church was this hub. It was a communal space, and media knew to come here for the truth. They knew to come here for, what's happening next and what's the movement, what's the next big thing. And so I think, honestly, today we are still doing those same things. We are still feeding people. We are still fighting for justice. We are still leading, our young people and serving families and meeting communities' needs. But for some reason, we stopped trying to keep up with the times. We're not reaching out to media for whatever reason it might be. Maybe it's because we want to keep the space and the work we're doing sacred. Or maybe it's just we don't understand or know how to move in the landscape. And it could be a mix of even we're stretched thin. Like, let's be honest, churches are stretched thin. And so I think that is why we are here today, to reclaim a skill set that we as a Black community had already mastered, and to use these tools that we have today, even better tools, to amplify the work that God is still doing in our four walls of our church and in our community. So I know you see it. The church doesn't have a messaging issue per se. We have a visibility gap. When we, look at the work that we're doing, the preaching is typically strong, the ministries are active, the impact is real, but the community doesn't see it. I've done some research and, it's like, oh, we don't see that, the biggest feedback I receive is we don't see the community, we don't see the church in the community. And it's like, well, where are you looking? Oh, I don't see them on social media. I don't see them in the news. I don't see them X, Y, and Z. And so we have a visibility issue in my mind, a visibility gap. And so, I know a lot of churches are feeding families, they're mentoring, they're supporting seniors, they're creating these safe spaces, but we are not getting it beyond the four walls. And so that leaves, gives me a reason to I want to better understand why is visibility slipping? We're not consistently showing what's happening beyond Sunday morning. Yes, we might stream the service live, but what are we doing beyond Sunday morning that we can share? We're not sharing impact stories. If families or congregation members are willing to share, how do we tactfully and skillfully share those stories, those impact stories that we're doing? And I think the other piece is we're not showing up in community news and local news feeds. So, we'll talk about it later of how do you find these, the right news outlets? How do you connect with reporters when you do get, them to respond back? So we'll talk about that a little later, but I think there is something about, just really not even knowing how to show up in that space as it relates to community news and local news and how to navigate. So we'll talk about it in a bit here. Um, and when we think about where the Black church absence is, it is in print, it's in radio sometimes, and it's even in TV. You might see other, multicultural churches that are showing up all over the place. And sometimes people think it's paid, but sometimes it is earned media. And so the difference between earned media and paid media is paid, you're paying money to get, on this news channel, you're paying money to get your social media posts all over the place. Whereas earned is I am doing something impactful in the community, and the news or these reporters are just interested. They just want to come see what's happening. But the thing is, there's so much going on in the community that we have to get the attention of the reporters so that they can come cover our stories for free. And so that is where I'm excited to just, dive in a little deeper into A, why is media important? But then B, what are the different ways that we can pull and attract media? So it helps build your credibility. So I think that is why media is important. It helps kind of debunk those, conversations of, I don't see the church in the community. It helps us expand our reach beyond, the members, and it helps position the church as a community hub. We want to be this communal hub. We are a communal hub. And so it helps us better position it. But then the media and social media pieces help us build relationships with community members outside of our four walls, because they are scrolling, they are looking, and if they continuously see us moving and grooving and shaking, they're going to say, okay, I know a little bit about this church because I keep seeing them post, or I know a little bit about this church because they just did an amazing back to school drive where they offered X, Y, and Z. So one of the basic things of, one of the quickest and basic ways to try to get media attention is to do a press advisory. And so as you think about a press advisory, it is simply an invitation to tell media, hey, we are having this big event. It typically outlines the who, the what, the when, the where, and the why. And I typically recommend sending it out roughly 48 hours to 24 hours before the event, because you don't want to send it too soon, because if you send it too early, the news cycle's so quick, the reporter might forget. So you have to send it within a nice time frame to make sure that they are able to remember it. And then I typically send one 48 hours before, and then I'll send another one roughly 24 hours before, because I'm like, hey, just in case some big news happened between that 48 hours, I'm in your inbox again at the beginning of the day saying, hey, don't forget, tomorrow we have this event. And if it is a very busy news cycle, sometimes I might send another reminder that morning of. So 12 hours before, 5 hours before, whatever it might be. But don't feel like you are bugging the reporter, because they are dealing with 50 million stories that they're trying to juggle. And so the more you're in their inbox or their telephone, whatever it might be, the better. And so with the press advisory, it is not a long essay. Don't send them a dissertation. It is very short, it's clean, it's clear and concise, and it says what is happening at your church. Why is it an important community issue? When and where it will be, and who is the church putting it on? Who is the organization putting it on? So always remember, media press advisory, keep it very short, the who, the what, the when, the where, and the why, and sending it out 48 hours ahead of time, maybe a reminder 24 hours, and then maybe another reminder around like earlier that morning. And then I think some good things to think about as you're like, well, what is something I should send a media advisory for? Health fairs is a big one. Voter education sessions, especially in the climate that we're in. If you look at gun violence visuals, holiday outreach, if you're doing a toy drive or anything around that, food giveaways, community forums, if it's about a prominent, important topic that's happening in your community. I think youth showcases, sometimes, media loves the youth. They love to talk about the youth. So if you're doing something really big around the youth, definitely highlight it. And I think the other piece, so we've talked media, advisory. The next piece is, this is a little more technical, but an op-ed. An op-ed is a letter to the editor, opinion letter to the editor. And I think this is for, churches or clergy and lay women and men who want to elevate a little bit and really start to show their stake in the ground around a certain topic. Opinion editorials or letters to the editors allow you to speak to a certain issue. And not after the fact. It's typically around the time that something is brewing in your community, in your neighborhood. And it could be around the topic of justice, education, violence, if election results, community needs, faith in, in the public life and how that connects. But those are ways that you can start to just, if you say, hey, I'm a faith leader and I want to get, more ingrained into the mental health space. I've seen this as a rising issue in my community. You might want to consider doing some op-eds around, mental health awareness month or, suicide awareness month, suicide prevention month. Those are the types of things where op-eds kind of get more, become more of an expert, so to speak, in a particular space. So we have the media advisory as one avenue in. We have the opinion editorial or a letter to the editor. And so the difference between an opinion editorial and a letter to the editor is the letter to the editor is typically a lot shorter. It is almost like a very quick call to action, whereas the opinion editorial is a lot longer, usually 600 to 800 words max, whereas the letter to the editor is probably a max of like 300 words. So it's something quick that can get the reporter's attention, whereas the opinion editorial is a lot longer and a little more in depth with, facts and, citations and things like that. But then we go into the fun part. To me, I enjoy showing up at radio stations. So, you can pitch radio stations. A lot of times in larger cities, you actually have the opportunity, there might be a community board where you can submit your event for, if it's a free event, you can typically submit it for free. And that is a space that most people don't even know about. So later on, we're going to do a little exercise where you will build out your media list. And so one thing is the news. Yes, it's great. Op-eds are great, but radio is usually looking and hoping that people will submit, especially gospel radio stations, because they're looking to build out. These are all the amazing things that are happening in the community, and they're free. Like, they're free 99. So why not leverage them? So definitely want to make sure we do not overlook radio stations, and especially if you have a gospel radio station in your area or a Christian radio station. Look into making sure that they look into seeing if they have a community forum or a community board, because it could be a very free and easy way to drive reach and awareness to your event. And then the other piece here is using paid media strategically. So my recommendation here is if you can't even, if you don't have the capacity to post consistently without paying any money, I would not recommend investing in paid media just right off the bat. So we'll talk about that a little later as well, but paid media strategies are ways to help amplify and extend your reach, but you should always do it once you have a strong social media strategy. And so with that, we are getting ready to have a little activity. So we're going to take a couple of minutes here to really just start to build out a local media list if you don't know. So if you don't know who your media, reporters are and things like that. So I want to take roughly 8 or 9 minutes to just do some Google research and just help you all have time to find your reporters. So the first step we're going to do is, you could start with the Google search. And so point A here says church name in the news. And I want to talk about this piece because this is, if you are so for me, I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio. And there are a few churches that I always see in rotation in the news. And I'm like, how do they keep getting a spot in the news? And so what I would recommend is you search that. If you have top of mind a church that you are like, or an organization, you're like, I always see them in the news. I'm not understanding how they get in the news, but I can't even get my church covered for, X, Y, and Z. Search that church right now. So I want you to go in the Google search and search, I'll use my church name, Chosen Ministries in the news. And so if you search this church, and you might have to put the city you're in, but if you put, Chosen Ministry in Cincinnati news, see what pops up, whatever that church is that you're thinking top of mind, and then see who the reporter is. Click on the article, see who the reporter is. And so that will help you identify what news reporters like this type of content or would cover this type of content. And so when you see that, write it down, because that will help you build your list. So then when you say, hey, I got this big event coming up around Mother's Day, I already know one reporter or two reporters that have already covered stories about other churches. And this is the type of content that they like to cover. So I know as soon as I'm ready to send my media advisory, I'm reaching out to them. So definitely do a Google search. We'll spend about maybe another 7 minutes or so doing a Google search. You can search these different type of, Google searches as community reporters in my city, And put your city, don't put in my city, put, if it's Cincinnati, if it's Columbus, if it's, wherever it might be, Savannah, Georgia. And then also don't forget about the radio. So please search free gospel radio advertisement in said city. So we're going to spend about 5 more minutes just doing a Google search. And when you find these reporters, please write them down or save them somewhere so that you don't forget, and start to compile your own little short media list. If you have a reporter that you see all the time and you know the news station or the radio station already, Google their name. You can go and say, look at the newsroom or meet the team, and it should provide you with the email. Sometimes they'll put the number. Sometimes they won't share the reporter's direct information. It might say something like, news desk. That is fine. Still put that email down. So then all you have to do is just copy and paste their emails, send that immediate advisory out. So we got about 5 more minutes, and then we'll keep it going. So I'll give you a few minutes to build out your list. All right. So I hope you all have compiled a list of at least 3, maybe 2 to 3 reporters in your area that you can start to reach out to in the future. And if you need maybe a template on how to set up a media advisory, definitely we'll talk about that a little later. I don't mind sharing out some, information materials on how to set up a media advisory and things like that. But this is my bread and butter. This is the piece that I love, is social media. So when you look at news media coupled with social media, it's like a golden formula. So, sometimes people might focus solely on social media, and we don't think about the media reach, the drive, the media reach. But sometimes people just focus on, oh, I want to get on the news, and don't think about the social media component. But if you bring both of those together, the reach can be amazing. You're getting outside of not only your probably neighborhood, but throughout your city. And sometimes you might even go viral, who knows? But news media is powerful, don't get me wrong. But when it's coupled with social media, it does some amazing things. Because many people, they live on this cell phone here. Not all, but most people are sitting here, they're scrolling, they're looking at social media, they're getting notifications directly to their phone based on certain people who might post. And so that is where their attention is. That's where the conversations are. And that's where we need to be present as the Black church. We need to show up in these spaces. We don't need to, say, oh, I don't understand it, I don't want to touch it. This is the prime spot right now for us to continue to, lead and change and share our narrative versus letting somebody else tell the narrative of the Black church. And so I truly believe social media can be ministry when stewarded well. So you could use sermon clips, prayers, testimonials, all the things, but it has to be stewarded properly. And so when you think about, social media, it is the new public space. It is the new public square. It gives you free reach to the community. It drives social media. And so even when you think about how do you continue to amplify what you might have gotten on the news. So if the news picks up a story, they come out to your church, they do a write-up about you or your pastor or whomever, share it on your social media channels. Share it on your website as well. Don't forget about your website. And it is used as a source of credibility. So not only are you sharing out some great content on social media, but now you're like, hey, I'm a credit, like I got some validators. I have the news, as a validator. I have, X, Y, and Z. And so sharing those news pieces act as a validator, and hopefully will drive more people to your social media platforms because they're seeing you out and about in a larger community space with reporters. So I know you might have joined this thinking, oh, we're going to talk about how do I make the best social media posts? How do I do X, Y, and Z? But no, I want to start before we even talk about posting. I want us to have a conversation about something way more important. It is the social media strategy. A lot of people jump straight to, all right, let's get this, Facebook, Instagram up, and let's just start posting. I think we skip the question of what is strategy. And so I think when you go back, and you might have to post a little bit just to get a better understanding of what type of content performs well. But when you don't revisit the strategy, you can just cause a lot of inconsistency, a lot of randomness. You send mixed messages to those that are looking at your, social media platforms. You can exhaust the volunteers because they're trying to figure out, how do I keep up? What's the messaging? One week is this, one week is that. then we go on a pause, then you want to come back full force. So we need to understand what is our social media strategy so that helps alleviate just random messaging. It helps prevent just burnout from your volunteers. And so a good strategy to me is one that has a tone of voice, a defined tone of voice. And so I have this, no, Wendy's and McDonald's is not connected to this presentation, but I don't know if a lot of you remember, maybe you don't. A couple of years ago, McDonald's and Wendy's and Burger King had like this kind of clapback conversation going on Twitter specifically. And then eventually Wendy's took it to Instagram, and Facebook, but it was strategic. This brand knew what their tone of voice is. So when I say tone of voice and brand character, it is how do we want to sound on social media? How do we want to show up? What is our tone of voice? So from a, faith space, is it, empowering? Is it nurturing? Is it about restoration? Is it about, you see the oil and our, evidence in our oil, whatever it might be, you need to come together with your senior leaders and understand, how do we want to show up on social media? Because if you keep just posting randomly, it's not going to ladder into a larger strategic message that you're trying to post out. So McDonald's and Wendy's, you could tell their tone of voice was witty, it was playful. They didn't mind, having banter back and forth because they seen it was what the consumers wanted, but they also understood like, hey, we came in knowing we wanted to disrupt some conversations and disrupt social media by showing up as this kind of agitator, but witty agitator in social media spaces. So you see, McDonald's posted Black Friday, need copy and link. And so Wendy's responded back and said, when the tweets are as broken as the ice cream machine. So it was making a joke or a clap back at McDonald's for typically not having working ice cream machines. So thinking through what is your tone of voice, how do you want to show up will help craft and help you better understand what are your pillars, what do we regularly want to talk about. It will force you to really think through what is the goal of social media, who is our target audience here, who is, what are our objectives on social media? Because if you just post in the post, you don't even have a way to really understand what your metrics are. So if my metric and my goal is, hey, I want to post because I want to just help people feel empowered, okay, great. But what else? What's the deeper reason? Is it because I want to draw awareness to my church and I want people to eventually start coming? Possibly. So thinking through, like diving deep, don't just give surface level, but really diving deep and understanding what is the purpose of social media? What is the purpose of it for my organization, for my church? And then when you think about that, who is our target audience? So if it's, mother so-and-so who's 80 years old, maybe, or maybe not. She might not be on social media. So maybe it's not the best place for you to show up. But if it's, I wanted, I have a young adult population in my church that is 30 and under, 25 to 45, that is a target demographic for social media, especially for Instagram, Facebook, all the things, TikTok. So how do we refine or how do we create a strategy so that I can get the reach to more young adults and bring them into the church? And then when they're in the church, how do we retain them? That's a whole nother discussion for a whole nother time. But that is where I think we need to start thinking about social media is what is our strategy? So thinking about the tone of voice, thinking about our brand character, what do we want to talk about, our target audience, our posting schedule. So, you might not want to roll out posting every day if you can't maintain it. So is it 1 to 2 times a week? Maybe to start out, I would recommend, is it 3 to 4 as you see content continuing to build? Possibly. But I always recommend starting with like 1 to 2 posts a week just to get comfortable, get your, volunteers acclimated, test some content, test some messaging. Because if you post a whole bunch and you don't have a strong message, you can cause some confusion. Also establishing responsibilities. So with this piece is you might have a team, but helping the team understand who is responsible for the strategy, who's responsible for the messaging, who is responsible for even just how the content is created, who's responsible for posting it, and who's responsible for engaging and governing the messaging. So you don't want to say 50 million people have access to the social media account because then you might not know if something happens, who made this post, who made that. So making sure you have responsibilities outlined and making sure there's maybe 1 to 2 gatekeepers of your social media platform is very key to me. And then as you grow, understanding your metrics. So you have your likes, you have your shares, you have your views, you have comments. Better understanding those will help you better understand what type of content resonates best with your target audience. So if you post a testimonial and it does great, awesome. If you post a, day in the life of pastor and it doesn't do well, maybe you don't consider doing that anymore. If you do a few and it's like, okay, this ain't really driving what we want, okay, try something different. So testing is great, but once you have some established metrics, definitely leaning into the strategy and creating that is going to be very key. And then this piece, what is digital discernment? And, for me, everything holy is not meant to be posted. So, I have seen some churches that really share intimate, what I believe are intimate sacred moments on social media. And so this social media piece is a ministry. We hold it tender. It's a vulnerable space. It is spirit filled. And so we need to make sure that we aren't sharing things that might hurt someone. In today's culture, the temptation is definitely to record any and everything. But social media, digital media ministry requires some pastoral ethics. It requires wisdom and discernment on what to post and what not to, and even sometimes what to record and what not to. So there must be some clear guidelines, some understanding, some moments are meant to be witnessed and some are meant to be protected. So some we might share, but some we should be protecting and not sending out. And I think when it comes to digital discernment, especially on social media, it is important for your pastor to be involved in the decision-making piece. That's key because you might say, oh, this is good to go, but the pastor might say no. So I think it is extremely important as, clergy and lay men and women to make sure that you are involved in the social media strategy piece so that it's already off the bat, what isn't appropriate, what isn't. And sometimes it might even be an in the moment decision of like, hey, don't even post that. But I like to use this standard of if you have to question it, you might not want to do it. You might not want to post it. So if you got to question it, don't post it. But I truly want to just encourage you to think about the digital discernment and what should and shouldn't be posted because we're here to support and love on people and not to have them, be used as content. So that's just something to think about. And then the other piece, you might say, all right, Dom, this is great. This is awesome. I love all the things you're talking about, social media strategy, you're talking about reaching out to PR for media advisories, but we're stretched thin. Like the church is stretched thin. I can barely get somebody to do X, Y, and Z. So how can I do social media? And the key here for me is what I would say is, you don't need to post every day, as I mentioned before, and you do not need to be everywhere. So as you think about your social media strategy and maybe even your communication strategy that, if you have the church calendar, you say, hey, we know we have 3 tentpole big events. We know we need to be reaching out to media around these times. We know we also need to make sure we have social media around these times. So thinking through and making sure you have a strong church calendar will help connect to the smaller piece of social media, which is maybe you're posting 1 to 2 times a week. Maybe it's around certain tentpole moments, but then considering repeatable formats. So if you have like a graphic for a Sunday recap where you're going to share your snippet of sermons, just create that graphic and all you got to do is drop in that sermon. Maybe it's a midweek encouragement that every Wednesday, pastor or somebody from the leadership team is coming in to do a midweek encouragement. So you got your Sunday recap, you got your midweek encouragement. Maybe you record it after Bible study, so then it goes out on Thursday. I don't know, but just thinking through when people are already at church, so you can leverage them versus them having to come back to church to record something. But then thinking about what's something that could quickly be and easily be reused, so you don't have to keep creating new formats. Working smarter, using scheduling tools. So I outlined a few here so that you don't have to be at your phone posting. You can sometimes schedule certain posts to go out. Sometimes if you're tagging people, you have to think about that because it might not properly tag them. But these are some free resources, Meta Business Suite, Buffer, Hootsuite that I have used to post content ahead of time. And these are typically, they have free versions, but they also have paid versions. I will say I was at Procter & Gamble and we used the free 99 version of Hootsuite for the longest, and then we transitioned to Buffer. So don't think that just because it's free, it's not a great tool. It is an amazing tool. And then I mentioned this repurposing sermons. If you're like, hey, I don't have the capacity to think through a social media, little cute thing every week, maybe you just are literally repurposing your pastor sermons. And it could be a 1 sermon recap clip. You can do 1 to 2 key quotes from it. You can do a reel and maybe a reflection post, or maybe you get a testimonial after service. And so there are tools that will help you. You could literally copy the link from YouTube or even just drop the downloadable file of the pastor's sermon into a few tools that I outlined here: Pulpit AI, Opus, CapCut. There are a lot of different, tools and resources that will be able to just quickly use AI generated technology to pull out a plethora of different, sermon clips that you can use. And so I actually just started doing this for my pastor. And so you can pull, so I use Opus. And so what I did was I dropped the sermon in there from Facebook, and I have a whole bunch of little clips, I think maybe about 30 that I need to go through, just so that you can see, like, it will pick up on, if you say, give me an emotional clip from this sermon, 30 seconds. The AI tool is able to detect and will pull out, like, all right, here you go. And so it will pull and it will grade it. So in Opus, it grades it like, this is a trend, something that's social media trendable, something that is exciting, something that has a great, it says, I think, like rhythm. So it can kind of pick up on when they're escalating into like an emotional point or peak in the sermon. So I definitely recommend looking into that. And don't think you have to use it only for sermons. If you have, your leader of an organization and you gave a speech somewhere, drop that speech in there, because guess what? It will do the same thing. And so if you want to use that speech, then you use it and say, I had the opportunity to speak here, and you pull out one of those, very, emotional or, kind of gravitas pieces of your speech, and you use it for social media. So those are just some, tools and resources. And then the other thing is recruit maybe 1 to 2 digital disciples, so to speak. So it could be a retired person who has time. You might have to teach a little bit, but they have the time, they have the space. So invest the time in them and allow them to learn social media and let them run with it. The other piece is maybe finding a tech savvy younger person. Now, don't think all young people and just funnel into social media, because that can also be a turn away. So seeing who might have the skill set, who might have the interest. Maybe there's a young photographer in the church, maybe there's a young graphic designer, and you kind of go about it in a tactful way to say, hey, I know you already have these skill sets, so would you be interested in supporting, the digital media ministry, the social media ministry? So those are some good ways to think about it. And then I mentioned use templates. So Canva has free templates. They also offer for nonprofits a free premium version. So I don't know if you know that, but you can Google Canva nonprofit free membership, and that could save you some money. So if you already have the premium, you didn't know about that, please stop paying it, and then go get the premium account so you can the nonprofit account, so you can save some money. But also leveraging Chat GPT. If you like, hey, I don't even have the time to think about a caption, leverage Chat GPT. Don't take it verbatim, tweak it, edit it, add your own twist to it. But that could be an opportunity for you if you're like, I'm at capacity, I don't even have time to think about a caption. Leverage Chat GPT. That's what it's here for. Sort of, kind of. And so with that, I just want to, thank you all for sitting with me, spending this time with me. We went through PR and the importance of that, very high level. We went through the social media piece and the importance of strategy. I didn't want to give you too much on what social media and how to post, because I think before we get into that granular piece, we need to talk about the strategy, because I think that is where we are missing the opportunity is like thinking through the strategy before we start to implement, because strategy equals stronger impact and stronger delivery. So thank you all for sitting with me, talking with me, listening here. If you scan this QR code, so I did just start Cisco Consulting Firm, which is a political consulting organization or company, but it also is a space where I am starting to do more faith-based communication work. So if you would like to scan the QR code and enter your information, I am giving away 2 social media communication plans. I'm going to go, 2 lucky winners. I'll pick it at the end of the week, in 7 days. But if you scan this QR code, enter your information, I will be reaching out to 2 lucky organizations or churches to provide them with a communication implementation plan and audit. So feel free to scan that, and let's open it up for some questions if there aren't any.
Wow. Dom, thank you. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. If we can put me on the screen. I want you to know this has been powerful. Before there was the internet, there was the Black church. That is so on point, because everything starts off in the Black church, and good news spreads abroad. And guess what? Even bad news spreads abroad. So I'm really excited about this, and I pray that everybody who's heard this powerful information would leverage it and use it to really amplify your ministry, your organization, and to have a better digital print within your community space. So if you have any questions for Dom, just put them in the chat and write. So excellent presentation. Man, this has been really good. I was taking copious notes because I know SBC 21, as we go into the new year, we're going to need some communication strategy, some brand development. So you will hear from us sooner than later. So those who want to get that free 2-week social media strategy for free 99, please get the QR code. We have it in the chat. Cisco Consulting Firm, and you can get more information from this powerful leader who's in various spaces, political. So can I ask you, while people are about to ask questions, how did you get in the political space?
So I actually started in the political space. So
Really?
my communications background is in political and religious rhetoric. And so I started over 15 years ago, like in community engagement work for political campaigns, and then eventually went up to campaign management. So I've managed campaigns from school board all the way up to congressional campaigns. And
Oh,
it's been
wow.
it's been a great opportunity to just, do that across Ohio.
And I asked that question because I was a political science major, and I always said I was going to be the first Black American mayor of the city of Houston, but Chief Lee Brown beat me to it. But
See,
anyway, I
yes, yes.
digress. But I think the public square and faith based, they go together. So
They
thank you for
do.
this.
They
And
do.
communication strategies are always across the board, and you have to just leverage them based on the context. So thank you for this information. People said Dom is an expert, so you have a lot of faithful followers out there. So Dom, how can we get more information? Do you have any social media handles or anything that we can start following you?
Yes, so on Facebook, I am Dominique Francisco. On website, I'll drop it in the chat again, but I also will drop my social media handles.
Okay.
My social media handle is Cisco on Instagram. It is Cisco _kid 26. So my last name is Francisco, Cisco Kid. But
I- like the wars, Cisco Kid.
yes,
Go ahead
exactly,
on.
exactly.
Yeah. All right. That's good. That's easy to remember too. This, I believe, you said it best. We don't have a messaging problem. We have a visibility gap. Say a little bit more about that. I know it's clear, but that's a powerful statement.
Yes, yes. I think we are doing amazing work as organizations, as faith leaders, but we don't show it a lot of times. You
Yeah.
see kind of the big people who have, like, oh, I have a whole social media team, so I can get my information out. But it is the pastors that are on the ground that are doing the work, the leaders that are on the ground doing the work that just haven't had even the time. I think going back to the last slide of capacity, having the capacity and having the time to take all that information and put it out on social media. So you're so busy doing the groundwork, doing the work on the ground, helping move the community, helping transform them that we can't sit back to say, how do we get this information out? And so one way is news media, PR, but the other way is that social media piece. And you
Yeah,
might
I
not have
like
somebody
that.
running with you, but
Yeah.
finding a way to get it on social media.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we got people, and someone said something about those sermons apps. So I think Dom, if you can let them know that the Opus AI Opus,
Yes, I
real
will drop
powerful.
them
Yeah,
in the chat right now.
yeah,
CapCut, you have Pulpit AI is another
yeah.
one. But I will put them in the
Yeah.
chat right
Yeah.
now.
And as Don is putting those in the chat, I want y'all to know that our responsibility with strengthening the Black church for the 21st century is how do we strengthen leaders and congregations to help transform their community. So these are some tools that you can get. Matter of fact, tell your members every third Thursday of the month. There's a space right here at sbc21.org. And the crazy thing about it, spread the word. We want to get this. We have, like, right now, we're responsible for every Black church in Methodism. I think it's like 1,860 plus churches that we're responsible for to resource and strengthen them. So, and we have a 6-member team. But guess what? Now you have given us some tools how to work smarter and not harder. So
Yes,
so so
yes.
thank you for that.
And I want to talk about this is something I didn't talk about in my presentation, but what we're doing with United Women in Faith is we are exploring faith influencers. So
Ah,
as we are looking into assembly next year, 2026, we have started leveraging, women in the faith space that have a nice following and
Oh,
seeing how we can tap them to be cultivated into influencers. You see the worldly influencers, so to speak, but who are our faith influencers? Who can we start
wow.
to cultivate? And so we have started doing that, and it's doing really well for
And,
us from an
and
assistant
say
side.
that again, because there's some body right. We have some faith leaders out here, some female leaders who are doing a great job. So let
Yes.
them know how they can get to be a part of it.
Yes, so if you contact me, my UW Faith email, I will put it in the chat.
Great.
That is, I'm at United Women in Faith, but also from a Cisco consulting perspective, but I will drop both of them in the chat. But we are looking from an assembly side. How do we, begin partnering with more women? How do we help them understand the influencer space from a faith perspective and just start to just run with it and
That is
lean into
awesome.
influencers. So
Wow.
yes.
Yeah.
There's a great question in the chat.
All right. What is it,
Should
Candy?
pastors keep their personal social media messages separate from church
Oh,
messaging?
oh,
Ooh, that's a good
wow.
one. That's a good one.
They don't went from asking questions to meddling now.
I think that it is it. I say yes, depending on what the pastor's objective is. So if the pastor's like, I just want to focus solely on the church, keep it all the same, keep it all set. I mean, all together. But I think there's a space where you're seeing a lot of pastors now who are doing a lot more in the community. And so I always say keep them separate, but you can cross collaborate now. I think the beauty of Facebook and Instagram, you have the opportunity to do cross collaboration. So if there's a post that your church is putting out and you're like, hey, from me being the pastor, I want to share this on my channel, have your church cross collaborate with you. But I always say keep them separate, and then if there's something that you want to cross share across both of them, do the collaborator tool so that they can be on both channels. But I always say keep them separate because, the pastor might start making, putting out books and start speaking. And next thing CEO of, a nonprofit or whatever it might be, but that might not be the right space to just do it solely on the
Right.
church panel
Right.
or church
That's
platform.
an excellent question. And great leaders don't have all the right answers, but they ask all the right questions. So whoever asked that, that's a great question.
Yeah.
So you've been saying assembly. So tell me about the assembly. When is it, where, and help the audience know about the assembly.
Absolutely. So the United Women in Faith have our quadrennial assembly. So it is a gathering of it's typically around 5,000 women. And so we go to a
Ah,
different city every time. And so next year will be in Indianapolis, Indiana, and it
okay.
will be May 14th through the 19th in Indiana at the Indianapolis Convention Center. And it
Oh,
is
great.
an opportunity for women of all denominations to just come together to love on one another. And so this year, our big focus was interdenominational collaboration. So
Oh,
we
wow.
have 7 influencers coming from different faiths to help drive, the excitement and
Yeah.
garner the excitement around it.
Yeah.
We have let's see who else is coming that is exciting. Stacey Abrams is our keynote and her
Oh,
mother.
wow.
So they will be
Now,
the
can
keynote.
men come? Could I come?
You can absolutely, you can come. Yes,
All
you can
right.
come. We do not discriminate. You
All
might be
right.
one of the very few, but you can definitely come. It
All
is,
right. Well, that's
yes,
good. No, that's great. And I think I love what you said, and we have to come to a close, but I can hear the rebranding of United Women of Faith versus United Methodist Women. And
yes,
now you're more ecumenical. I hear more kind
yes,
of, yeah, that's good. And I hear the language and I see the title. So now I see the match. That's good stuff. Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And I did just drop the registration and information about United Women
Great.
of Faith. So yes,
All
yes.
right. Well, Dom, this has been great. The time has been far spent, and they have eaten their lunch, and they're gonna get ready for their dressing and their stuffing and their
Yes,
pumpkin
yes.
pies and sweet potato pies. So you all, we won't be here on live next month, but we will see you all back in 2026. Remember this: go and like our channels, our website. Thank you for showing up, and remember this, family: when the Black church is strengthened, the entire denomination is stronger. So until next year, may God bless you and may God keep you. Thank you. And thank you, Don, for all that you do.